My name is Oprah Abraham, and the night everything exploded began on a stage filled with bright lights, polished floors, and the quiet pride of hundreds of parents and students. I was standing there, reaching out to accept an award I had worked years for, when the moment twisted into something unforgettable. The dean announced my name with a warm smile. Oprah Abraham, Outstanding Academic Achievement Award. The applause rose around me, echoing off the walls. I stepped forward, calm and steady, determined not to show how much this achievement meant to me. But peace never lasts long in my family. Not when my younger brother is in the crowd. Just as the dean placed the certificate in my hands, a loud screech echoed through the hall. A chair scraped back so violently that everyone in the front rows flinched. I didn't even have to turn. I already knew it was Hunter Abraham. His voice crashed across the auditorium before anyone could stop him. She's a cheater. You're all celebrating a liar. The entire room gasped. People twisted in their seats. Phones came up to record. Some whispered my name like it was suddenly a scandal. I saw my mother, Melissa Abraham, stiffen in embarrassment, while my aunt covered her mouth as if shielding herself from the drama. Hunter kept going, louder and uglier. She doesn't deserve that award. You don't know what she did. The dean looked completely thrown off. Hunter, sit down. This isn't. But he never finished his sentence, because I didn't react the way anyone expected. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't even blink. I simply took the certificate with both hands, turned toward the dean, and leaned in just enough so only he could hear me. My voice was calm and controlled as I whispered a single word. Just one. Quiet, steady, and powerful enough to drain the color from his face. He pulled back with a startled expression, then quickly masked it with a polite smile. Thank you, Ms. Abraham. You may take your seat. The audience noticed the shift. Hunter definitely noticed. His anger suddenly froze midair, replaced by confusion. Oprah, what did you tell him? What did you say? I didn't answer. I walked down the steps of the stage with slow, deliberate movements, each step echoing through the tense silence of the room. My parents watched me like they didn't recognize their own daughter. I didn't sit with them. I chose a seat alone, by the aisle, where the shadows felt strangely comfortable. Hunter kept whispering loudly across the row, Oprah, tell them. Say something. But I stayed quiet. Because silence, when used correctly, can be far louder than screaming. The ceremony struggled to move on, but nothing felt normal anymore. The dean kept glancing at me like he was waiting for something to happen, as if that one whispered word was a fuse waiting to burn down. Hunter kept staring too, but for the first time in his life, he looked scared of me. Not because I yelled. Not because I fought back. But because he realized I knew something he didn't. By the time the next student was called on stage, I finally allowed myself a small, hidden smile. Hunter thought humiliating me in public would be the end of the story. He had no idea. I had only just started mine. If you really want to understand why my brother Hunter yelled in that auditorium, you have to go back to the beginning. Because none of this chaos started on the stage. It started in our childhood, in small moments that looked harmless on the outside but shaped everything that came later. Growing up, I was the kid who tried to make my parents proud. I brought home certificates, medals, cleaned my room without being told, tried to be the good daughter. But in our house, there was a rule no one ever said out loud, yet everyone obeyed: Hunter comes first. Whenever I achieved something, the celebration lasted 5 minutes. But when Hunter did something, anything, the entire family acted like the world should stop spinning. If he got a passing grade, we went out for ice cream. When I topped my class, they said, "Good job, Beta. Now help your brother with his homework." Holidays were the same story. On Eid, I'd save up coins to buy my parents a small gift, and they would smile. But when Hunter gifted them a keychain he found on the street, they made him feel like he'd given them gold. My aunt always pinched my cheeks and said, "Oprah, you're the sensible one. Hunter is just a child. Let him have his moment." He was 16. I was 18. Even then, I noticed small cracks. Little signs of jealousy that I ignored because, well, he was my brother. When I won a school science fair, my project mysteriously went missing from the table before the final presentation. My teacher found it lying outside the hall, crushed. Hunter stood nearby, pretending he didn't know what happened. I told myself it was coincidence. Another time, I saved pocket money for months to buy myself a small digital watch. The next day, it was gone. Hunter wore it to school and claimed I had given it to him. When I confronted him, he shrugged and said, "Mom said you don't mind." And when I went to my mother, she only sighed and repeated the same sentence she always used to shut me down. "Oprah, he's the baby of the family. Be the bigger person. Be the bigger person. Be patient. Be understanding. Be quiet." Those words shaped my entire teenage life. But the strange thing was, the more I stayed quiet, the bolder Hunter became. The more I focused on my success, the more determined he seemed to pull me down. It was like every achievement I earned was a threat to him, and every nice thing I received was something he felt belonged to him instead. Still, I kept believing things would get better, that he would grow out of it, that he would finally start seeing me as a sister, not a rival. I was wrong. Because one night, something happened in our house that made me realize Hunter wasn't just jealous. He was dangerous. And that moment became the first warning sign that the confrontation on stage was only the beginning. People think betrayals appear suddenly, like storms that come without warning. But mine arrived quietly, disguised as accidents, misunderstandings, and technical issues. At first, I didn't suspect anyone. Not even Hunter. Not yet. The first real blow happened during my second year of college. I had worked on a research presentation for weeks. Slides polished. Notes ready. Data checked 3 times. The morning of the event, I logged into the campus computer to make final edits, and every file was gone. Deleted. Completely wiped out. My hands shook. My heart pounded. I asked the IT department if it was a system crash. They said the files weren't corrupted, they had been manually erased. I didn't say anything out loud, but a strange thought flickered in my mind. Only 2 people knew where I stored my USB. Me, and Hunter. I pushed the thought away. It felt wrong to suspect my own brother. Still, as I walked toward the auditorium with a half-reconstructed presentation, I felt a cold whisper crawl across my spine. That evening, when I got home, I found Hunter in my room, sitting casually on my chair, spinning it like it belonged to him. He smiled and said, "Heard you messed up your presentation. Tough day, huh?" He didn't blink. He didn't even pretend to be concerned. It was too smooth. Too perfectly timed. I told myself it was coincidence. Again. But then came the second incident. I had been shortlisted for a scholarship interview. A big one. The kind of opportunity that could change someone's entire future. The night before the interview, I printed the confirmation letter and left it on my study table. The next morning, it was gone. Completely missing. I searched all over the house, tearing through drawers and shelves until I felt breathless. When I finally reached campus and asked the panel if I could still sit for the interview, they told me my slot had been cancelled because I didn't confirm attendance. Except I had. I had sent an email reply days earlier. I checked my sent folder. The email was missing. Deleted. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Someone had accessed my laptop. Someone had gone through my inbox. Someone had erased the one message that mattered. That night, I asked everyone at home if they had touched my laptop. My mother shook her head. My father barely looked up from his phone. And Hunter? He laughed and said, "Maybe your laptop hates you." The third sabotage was the one that broke my denial. Our department was holding an innovation competition. The prize wasn't money or a certificate, it was something bigger, direct mentorship from a top industry expert. I knew I had a strong entry. I had tested my prototype multiple times. Everything worked perfectly. But on the day of testing, I opened my project box, and felt my heart sink. The wiring inside was cut. Clean cuts. Not torn. Not accidental. Someone had opened the box, damaged the system, and closed it again neatly so it wouldn't be obvious until the last second. I remember standing there, frozen, staring at the pieces that represented weeks of work. People around me whispered. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked amused. And across the hall, leaning against a wall with his arms crossed, was Hunter, watching. For the first time, I didn't look away. For the first time, I let the suspicion settle in fully. This wasn't jealousy anymore. This was sabotage. Calculated. Directed. Personal. But even then, I didn't confront him. Not because I was scared of him, but because I felt something was happening behind the scenes, something bigger than these small attacks. And deep in my chest, a quiet voice whispered. If he can destroy your dreams in the dark, what is he preparing to do in the light? I didn't know it then, but the answer was coming soon, loud, public, and devastating. The morning after the ruined prototype, something inside me changed. I stopped hoping things were accidents. I stopped making excuses. I started investigating. My first clue came from the campus IT office. I had requested an audit of the computer I used on the day my research files disappeared. I expected them to tell me it was a malfunction. Instead, the technician leaned closer and whispered, almost like he didn't want anyone to hear, "Someone logged into your account from your home Wi-Fi the same night your files were erased." My heart froze. My home Wi-Fi. My password. My laptop. The technician printed the IP logs for me. I held the paper in my hands like a ticking bomb. The timestamps were so exact that I could map them to the moments I remembered Hunter walking casually past my door that night. He'd smiled. He'd acted normal. The entire time, he had already done the damage. I didn't tell my family about the logs. I didn't hint. I didn't react. I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. So I reached out to the only person I trusted enough to tell, my friend Lila. She was the kind of person who could see straight through emotional fog. When I explained the pattern of sabotage, she didn't call me paranoid. She just said, "Then let's get evidence that nobody can deny." Together, we went step by step. First, we checked my laptop's security settings. There were traces of unauthorized remote access. Files opened at odd hours. Emails viewed and deleted from outside my usual locations. All signs pointed to someone inside my home. Next, we requested access logs from the scholarship office. My email had indeed been deleted before the confirmation deadline. The metadata showed a login from a device that wasn't mine. Again, the IP matched my house. My stomach clenched. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to tell myself it wasn't Hunter. But all digital footprints were marching toward him like soldiers returning to camp. The deepest cut came when we examined the prototype sabotage. I opened the project box again. This time, I took photos and videos, documenting every slice of wire. A lab assistant pulled me aside and said, "Someone was in this room late last night." I recognized him. Tall. Dark hair. Blue hoodie. Looked a little like, "Your brother." Her voice trailed off, unsure if she should continue. I didn't respond. I couldn't. By now, I had gathered enough small pieces, but I still lacked a clear motive. Why would Hunter go this far? Jealousy? Competition? A desire for attention? None of those explained the precision. None explained the planning. Lila suggested one final step: hire a private investigator. I hesitated. It felt extreme. But my life was unraveling, and nobody else seemed willing to protect me. The investigator, Mr. Dalton, was a quiet man with a sharp gaze. He listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Your brother isn't just acting out. This level of interference means he's hiding something. Something he doesn't want you to find." His words chilled me more than I expected. Over the next week, Mr. Dalton shadowed Hunter's routines. He tracked his online activities. He followed the trail through old emails, deleted messages, and social media accounts. Every day he sent brief updates. Nothing explosive. Nothing conclusive. Until one night, my phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. A message from Dalton. "Oprah, I found something. And you need to see it in person. Tomorrow." I barely slept. When I met him the next morning, he slid an envelope across the table. I opened it slowly, breath tightening in my chest. Inside was a printed screenshot. Hunter wasn't just sabotaging me. He was pretending to be me. He had created a secret email account using my identity. And the worst part, he had used it to contact someone I never expected. The discovery hit me like a slap. My brother wasn't just jealous. He was planning something. Something bigger. Something dangerous. And I had no idea how far he had already gone. The moment I saw that fake email account, my name, my identity, my signature copied with unsettling accuracy, I felt the ground tilt under me. It wasn't just sabotage anymore. It was impersonation. A slow, cold fire lit inside me, not rage but clarity. If Hunter wanted a war, I would choose the battlefield. I spent the next morning sitting in my car outside the campus library, the envelope on my lap. Students walked past laughing, carefree, while I rehearsed every version of a confrontation I couldn't have yet. Not until I had enough proof that even my family, who always rushed to defend him, couldn't deny. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the enormous shift happening inside me. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was planning. And the difference was everything. Lila met me in one of the private study rooms. The moment she saw the documents, her eyes widened. "He's bold," she whispered. "You need to be bolder." Her voice sharpened my resolve. We laid everything on the table, every hacked login, every deleted email, every clue, and I started assembling the truth like a case file. Each page was a puzzle piece. Each puzzle piece pulled the mask off Hunter a little more. And tracing the shape of that mask made my pulse throb with something dark and determined. Mr. Dalton joined us later that afternoon. He brought a stack of printed logs, timestamps, and photos that made my chest tighten. He spoke in low tones, as if Hunter was in the walls listening. "If he's using your identity," he said, tapping the table lightly, "he's preparing for something bigger. You need to be ahead of him, not behind." His words struck me like a warning bell. I straightened my shoulders and leaned in. I would be ahead. I'd make sure of it. We created 3 folders: digital, physical, and witness. Every time I slipped a new piece of evidence inside, it felt like I was rebuilding the power Hunter had chipped away from me for years. Each folder grew heavier, and so did the tension inside my chest, but it was a good weight. A controlled, purposeful weight. The kind that anchors you before a storm you're finally ready to face. At night, I practiced what I would say in a mirror. Not a rant. Not emotional chaos. Just precise, calm truth. The kind that cuts deeper because it's delivered without raising your voice. I rehearsed standing tall. I rehearsed breathing steadily. I rehearsed the moment he would realize he was done underestimating me. Each rehearsal made my heart beat steadier, and sharpened the edge of what was coming. Dalton suggested documenting Hunter's movements more closely, so I began watching, quietly, from a distance. I noted when he left the house, who he met, when he logged into his laptop, what apps he opened. And the more I watched, the more I noticed how secretive he had become, always checking over his shoulder, always hiding his screen, always locking his door. The guilt was practically dripping off him, and I recorded every drop. Lila pushed me to think bigger. "If this ends publicly," she said, "you need a plan. A real one." Her tone made something inside me snap into place. She was right. Hunter loved attention. He lived for eyes on him. He'd ruined so many moments for me in private. Maybe it was time I controlled the narrative in public. A confrontation he couldn't twist. A truth he couldn't escape. A moment he couldn't steal. So I began mapping everything like a chess match. When to move. When to reveal. When to strike. I imagined the look on his face when the truth unfolded. I imagined the silence that would fall. I imagined the end of the game he thought he had been winning alone. And for the first time, I felt the fear he had planted in me begin to shift, transforming into something dangerous. Something powerful. Every night before sleeping, I reviewed the evidence again, checking for gaps, checking for weaknesses, building a version of the truth even he couldn't wiggle out of. And still, beneath the quiet intensity of the planning, one question pulsed in the back of my mind. Why? Why would my own brother go this far? That unanswered question kept every breath tight, every step sharp, every decision intentional. Because whatever he was hiding, whatever he was preparing for, I knew one thing for certain. When the reveal finally came, it wouldn't just expose him. It would change everything. The ballroom lights felt hotter than usual, like they were burning straight through my skin. I could hear the crowd settling into their seats, that restless hum before something big happens. My name echoed from the speakers as the dean announced the final award. This was the moment I had prepared for. Not the trophy. Not the applause. The truth. I walked toward the stage with steady steps. Every second felt stretched, pulled thin, ready to snap. I could feel Hunter's gaze stabbing into my back, the same way it had every time he tried to ruin something for me. But tonight I wasn't the quiet sister he could push around. Tonight I carried more than a speech. I carried evidence. When the dean handed me the award, the room warmed with applause. A normal ceremony would have ended right there, but my plan was just beginning. I leaned in, close enough that only he could hear me. I whispered the single phrase we had rehearsed. The phrase that would flip the whole night upside down. His eyes widened. A tiny, sharp breath escaped him. And that was all it took. The whisper spread through the staff like electricity, fast and silent. 2 coordinators shifted from their seats. Security at the back straightened. My heart was steady, like I had chosen this moment my whole life. Before the dean could introduce the next segment, a chair screeched across the floor. Hunter stood up so fast the table shook. His voice cracked through the hall. She cheated. She doesn't deserve that award. Check her files. Check her emails. She's been lying for months. Gasps shot through the room. Dozens of heads turned. Cameras lifted. My aunt covered her mouth. My father muttered something under his breath. My mother shook her head like she'd expected this, like drama was simply our family's second language. I didn't move. I held the certificate calmly against my chest. The quietness around me felt louder than the screaming inside my brother. It was always like this with him. He needed noise. He needed chaos. He needed attention. I only needed truth. 2 security officers walked toward Hunter. He took a step back, trying to look confused. She lied. Why are you coming to me? I'm telling you she cheated. The dean lifted his hand for silence, but the room had already gone cold. The authority figure standing near the doors raised a tablet, my evidence glowing on the screen. The investigation team I had contacted weeks earlier finally had their moment. The lead officer announced it calmly. Mr. Hunter Abraham, please remain where you are. The crowd rippled with murmurs. Hunter's bravado started to crack. A tiny tremor hit his voice. Why are you talking to me? She's the one you should question. I finally lifted my eyes and met his. Not with anger. Not with pain. With the stillness of someone who knows exactly how the next 2 minutes will unfold. The stillness that terrifies people who thrive on chaos. The officer continued. We have reason to investigate unauthorized access to academic files. These breaches were traced to your devices. There was a wave of confusion across the audience. A confused, uneasy silence hung in the air, waiting for the next sentence. Hunter froze. Literally froze. His face flushed red then went pale. He had always been a loud fighter, but now his throat tightened so much he couldn't get a word out. My mother stood up, shouting across the tables. Stop accusing him. Oprah, why are you doing this? He's your brother. Her voice cracked in the exact same way it did whenever she tried to defend the indefensible. My father tugged her arm, telling her to sit, but she refused. My aunt murmured a prayer under her breath. The dean gestured for calm. Please, let the officers do their job. Hunter stumbled back as the officers approached. It's not what it looks like. Someone used my laptop. I wasn't even home those nights. All lies. Lies I had heard my whole life, shaped in different tones but always the same meaning. A denial of responsibility. A refusal to face the truth. A projector flickered on. Evidence filled the screen. Timestamps. Login locations. The missing files he had stolen from me. The edits he made to sabotage my project. The IP address matching his devices. Every breadcrumb I had collected now formed a trail bright enough for everyone to see. The room shifted. Whispers grew louder. People leaned forward. Some recorded. Some stared in disbelief. Hunter gasped, pointing at me. This is a setup. She did this to me. I stepped forward for the first time that night. My voice was steady. No, Hunter. I just stopped letting you ruin me in the dark. The officers moved in. He backed into a chair, knocking it over. My mother rushed toward him, but a staff member held her back gently. The lead officer spoke again. Hunter Abraham, you are required to come with us for questioning. He stuttered, desperate. Oprah, tell them. Say something. But I didn't. Because he had never spoken for me. Not once. As the officers reached for him, the audience gasped again. Chairs shifted. Phones rose. My mother cried his name. My father covered his face. Hunter's voice cracked one last time. Oprah, please, don't do this. But choices have consequences. And his had finally come home. The officers escorted him toward the exit. The room buzzed with shock, tension, disbelief. The night that was supposed to belong to me, now belonged to the truth. And just before he disappeared behind the doors, Hunter turned back. His expression wasn't anger. It was fear. The kind that comes when you realize the person you underestimated was never powerless. The consequences were only beginning. And the real reveal? I hadn't even shown them the worst of what I found. Not yet. When the doors closed behind Hunter, the entire ballroom felt hollow for a second, like everyone was holding their breath but no one wanted to admit it. The applause that had filled the room earlier was gone. In its place was a thick, uneasy silence, one that clung to the walls and followed me as I stepped off the stage. The dean walked toward me, his voice low and steady. "Oprah, I'm sorry this happened on your night." I nodded, still clutching my certificate. It had to happen at some point. My voice didn't shake. Not anymore. By the next morning, the consequences had already begun. Hunter's face showed up in inboxes, notifications, and forwarded links. Screenshots of evidence. Statements from the investigative team. A temporary suspension pending full inquiry. Professors whispering in hallways. Classmates staring like he was an entirely different person than the boy they thought they knew. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability, something he had outrun for too long. When the investigator called me, his tone was straightforward. "We've confirmed multiple breaches. This will likely move forward formally." I swallowed hard. What does that mean for him? It means he's going to face the consequences he earned. Social fallout hit him first. Friends who once laughed with him now avoided him. The online groups he dominated now banned him. Messages leaked, his own words mocking my achievements, mocking women in STEM, mocking me for trying. I thought it would feel good to see the people who once praised him finally see him clearly. But instead, it felt like watching a slow collapse, ugly and heavy but inevitable. You can pity someone and still refuse to let them destroy you. My mother called over and over, her voice shaking on every voicemail. "Oprah, you've ruined your brother's future. How could you do this to family?" She never asked what he did to me. She never asked if I was okay. And that told me everything. I didn't answer. Instead, I stood by the window of my tiny apartment, the one I had rented after leaving home, and realized something. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel like it belonged to someone else. I could breathe without fear of being mocked or dismissed. The silence here didn't suffocate me. It felt earned. A week later, Hunter finally reached out. His message was a single line. "You didn't have to destroy my life to prove a point." I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I typed back. "You destroyed it yourself. I just stopped covering the pieces." I didn't send it. Some truths don't need delivery. They live quietly inside you, shaping who you become. As investigations moved forward, I focused on rebuilding the part of myself I had ignored for years. The part that knew my worth wasn't measured by how small I made myself to keep others comfortable. I studied harder. I slept better. I walked taller. And every step felt lighter than the last. On the final day of hearings, I saw Hunter from a distance. Shoulders slumped. Eyes dull. The arrogance that once filled every corner of him had finally cracked open. He didn't look at me. For once, he couldn't. As I walked past him, he whispered, barely audible, "Why did you stop protecting me?" I paused only long enough to give him the truth he had spent years running from. "I stopped protecting you," I said softly, "the moment I realized you never protected me." His face dropped. No anger. No excuses. Just the weight of reality settling exactly where it belonged. The hearing ended. The decision was made. He faced disciplinary action, academic penalties, and a long-term mark that would follow him into adulthood. The same way his sabotage had followed me. As I stepped outside into the cool air, I felt something loosen inside me, like a knot that had been tied since childhood finally coming undone. This wasn't victory in the theatrical sense. It wasn't dramatic revenge. It was freedom. Quiet. Steady. Mine. And as I walked away from the building, my final thought cut cleaner than any speech, any whisper, any confrontation ever could. He tried to break my future in the shadows. But I rebuilt my life in the light where he could never touch it again.